So I only bring my tea when I'm either anxious, which is those videos where I talk about my own writing, or when something really annoys me. You may guess which one this is. Hey guys, welcome back to the read-along of the Cyborg Tinkerer by Meg LaTorre. We're so close to the end, but it's not there yet. People have to be stupid for a little while longer, and then maybe we'll be done with Gwen. It's technically only the first and what's supposed to be a series, I suppose. So, well, I'm certainly done with Gwen after this. So at the end of the last chapter, Gwen was trying to save the Emperor from being assassinated. She told him to duck and then threw her knives at Bastion, right? She lets you know that she has trained under countless sailors since she began working as a tinkerer. That's why she is so good at throwing knives. Which also makes me wonder, how common are pirates in space? I mean, space is freaking vast. The odds of running into pirates even on the ocean are not massive, unless being a pirate is a very common job choice. But then in space, that's even more difficult. There is an awful lot of space in space, but okay. In this galaxy, apparently you run into space pirates all the time, so you better be trained in defending yourself. So far so good. She throws those knives at Bastion and then wonders whether she just killed him. She noticed a slight wobble to the knife, as though it were a flagpole swaying in the breeze, and she recalled his second implant. Sighing, she watched as he pulled the knife free, seemingly unharmed. The tip of the blade was bent, likely from the metal plating beneath his chest. So are you telling me this bitch threw knives at the guy she's so into, not remembering that he would be okay? So she literally thought, like, oh, I might kill him, but it's better than him assassinating the Emperor and then dying because of it? Like, what? Just like, what? Anyway, Bastion is unharmed. More soldiers storm the room. And Gwen notes that the human soldiers outnumbered the cyborgs 4-1, or perhaps more. Just important in a minute. The Emperor questions Bastion as to why he wanted to assassinate him, and Bastion still replies like he's out of it a bit, and his voice seems to come from afar. But Gwen starts arguing on behalf of Bastion. And while Gwen is speaking up on behalf of Bastion, we get this: Your Imperial Highness, I was trying to save your life and his. The Emperor turned to face her. You think I won't kill an assassin in my midst? Not if he's innocent. I'm sorry, you have a ballroom full of performers, cyborgs, just bound and gagged by the wall for no reason other than being cyborgs, and you're concerned that he might have, or he might hesitate to murder somebody in his palace? That's clearly not a concern of this Emperor, is it? At this rate, I'm just surprised that anybody is still alive. And we get this truly great bit. And I need to add an audio clip, so if the noise of a sick animal upsets you, you might want to tune out once I'm done reading this line. When Titus laughed, it was a throaty chuckle, like the sound a dog makes just before it throws up. I don't think I've ever heard anybody make that sound when laughing, and I sure as hell hope I never will. Gwen tells the Emperor, well, Celeste planned this whole thing, it's all on her. And he's like, well, where is she then? And she just walks in through the garden doors as well, and you have 4 times the human soldiers than you have cyborgs in this room, and nobody noticed her approach or said anything. No, she just waltzes in with her watchman and Roar at gunpoint. So I really don't get this part. One of the watchmen is holding onto Roar and has a gun at her head. I'm like, who are you threatening here? The major threat within the room currently is the Emperor, and why would he give a shit if you murder another cyborg in his palace? Whether you have Roar or not, what is Gwen gonna do if this is for her sake that you're holding Roar? It's like Celeste gives us a bit of her backstory. She lost her family and her kids in an attack that was ordered by the Emperor to wipe out a laboratory where they were doing cyborg research or creating cyborg implants. And they actually argue about details like, oh yeah, there was an investigator involved apparently and he ruled the whole thing an accident. It was a fire, not an airstrike or something. And why is the Emperor even arguing this with her? I mean, the whole Union knows that he's going after cyborgs already and apparently they're all behind it. And yet he seems nervous that Emmeline, which is her actual name by the way, is accusing him of murder. They all keep going on about laws and things having to be proper or whatever, but the Union doesn't strike me as a place where anybody gives a shit about the law so far. Like, you have pirates everywhere, people are being murdered left and right. Like, why does this matter in this context? And the scene just keeps on giving. So Emmeline/Celeste just admits to programming Bastion and planning this assassination. And Titus is all like, woohoo, you just admitted it in front of witnesses, haha. It's like, why has nobody started shooting anybody in this? Like, you have soldiers there and then you have the watchman there and you're all just standing there talking. I mean, there will be blood, obviously, but what is this conversation? It is just mind-boggling. Not only is the entirety of Cirque du Borg mine now, thanks to the law and your attempted crime, but I had been looking for someone who could create a weapon. And now I have the last 2 people in the Crescent Star system with the ability to do so. What? Suddenly, that there's been a crime attempted matters again, because that means he can take the performance from Emmeline. They are already bound and gagged in this room, like, huh? But yeah, he needs to murder more cyborgs because, you know, what is a villain without attempted genocide? But of course, Gwen is the very thing Titus needs to make all of this happen. He needs the Cyborg Tinkerer and the ship Tinkerer. But why? I don't get why. You're telling me there is not a single engineer out there who could build a weapon for you? Now let's do the math real quick. So we have at least 10 performers. Not all of them are just one person act. So at the very least, Mezana and Archeo, that makes 2 people. Let's just assume everybody else is a single person act. So including Rover and Gwen and Bastion, that makes 14 people, right? So as far as soldiers go, we have at least 52 soldiers in this ballroom, right? But now, all of them have their weapons fixed on Emmeline, Bastion and Gwen, so the watchmen can just distribute themselves around everybody. I don't know how many watchmen Emmeline brought with her. I assume all of them, and she had 50 in the stables. So they're like 50 people just spreading out through the room, and none of the soldiers reacts in any way because they're all just staring at the 4 people talking. Gwen comes to an agreement with the Emperor. She will build his weapon as long as he doesn't harm her friends, and she's allowed to kill the mistress. So Titus agrees, hands her back her knife, and Gwen hobbles over. Her first concern in this is obviously getting Bastion's chip back, because that's all that really matters. Saving the guy you're in love with, screw everybody else. Gwen offers that they can work together to get everybody back to the ship. And Emmeline is just like, no, she has no intention of leaving there because this guy killed her husband and her children. So she is clearly out for blood. She has been waiting 10 years or more for this. She is set on vengeance. And this is just baffling. And he intends to kill every cyborg in the Union. Cyborgs you helped create, Gwen persisted. Don't abandon them. They're your children too. You're saying this to the woman who has slaughtered dozens of cyborgs, getting their implants back over the past few weeks, and now you're hitting her with this and think it will actually do something? But But at least I guessed something correctly earlier on, because the Watchmen are indeed not human anymore. Emmeline has turned all of them into cyborgs, and now she presses her big red button. She literally has a large red button with her, and they all go haywire and start murdering soldiers. At least now having this competition makes some sort of sense, because Emmeline wanted those implants back. But why would you work on the Watchmen in the first place if you already have performers that you can program? Why bother taking the implant off of somebody then putting it into somebody else if you could just rewire or reprogram the people you already have? Who knows? Especially because you don't take out all of the cyborg implants, like the bits that are wired into the nervous system apparently don't get removed, so she must have had a massive stock of those to create all of those new cyborgs. Minor plot hole, I would say. The cyborg animals join the fray as well. While the Watchmen advance on the soldiers, they come crushing in through the garden windows. Gwen ends this chapter with, "We are so fucked. You were fucked before too, Gwen." So chapter 35 starts with some bloodshed between the Watchmen and the soldiers and the cyborg animals. And then some of the performers are acting like the Watchmen as well. So clearly Emmeline tampered with their chips as well. But yeah, it's just blood and body parts everywhere. I think there's a bit of an issue with continuity in this chapter in general, or in this fight. Because while the performers join as well, they're just clawing at each other and at the soldiers and then take them down one by one, even though their hands are bound, but never mind that. But it does sound like the cyborgs are outdoing the soldiers by quite a bit, like tearing them in two and whatnot. So I feel like a couple of minutes in, there shouldn't be an awful lot of soldiers left. But there's always more soldiers, because there are enough of them to surround Titus and escort him out of this room. How he was not trampled by some cyborg animal in the meantime, I don't know. Gwen starts fighting Emmeline, mostly to get Bastion's chip, because Gwen is a one-track mind when it comes to the man she loves. Emmeline seems confused as to why there are other cyborgs that are still free to move on their own, because apparently Gwen managed to reset some things in Aurora and Mezana as well when she tinkered with their programming. So those two are still free to act on their own as well. Because Gwen is distracted with realizing what is actually going on and how she messed with the coding. Emily manages to punch her and get her off of her. In the meantime, Titus managed to flee the room, and Emmeline is outraged and gets her Watchman and goes after him. So who's left to fight here? Is it just cyborg animals and a few still bound cyborgs fighting whatever is left of the soldiers? I don't know, I just imagine this is complete mayhem, and like they're just soldiers popping out of the wall to keep whatever is left in this room busy, because they can't have all left with Titus. But if they're so outmatched by the cyborgs, then how are there so many left? I'm confused. But there must be a decent number of soldiers left, because Mezana, who's just sitting by a wall, still bound, and clearly not attacking any soldiers, has one of them advancing on her, coming closer and considering shooting her, like aiming his gun at her. And you're just like, there are cyborg animals and Watchmen and other performers trying to kill you, and you advance on the woman that is bound and just sitting there. Are you fucking kidding me? This is so stupid. But Aurora and Gwen go and save Mezana, so it's fine. So Gwen shoots the soldier that was going after Mezana and attracts the attention of other people with the gunshot. And within moments, countless soldiers descended upon them. What countless soldiers? Who is keeping the cyborg animals busy? Did they all just run out and the soldiers decided, oh well, we like the ballroom better, we just stay here? Like, none of this makes sense. the group decides to flee this room, and they have the soldiers at their heels, right? And then with trembling hands, Rora unbolted the ballroom door, and they narrowly missed several gunshots. If they were right behind you and they have guns, why did they wait until you were fumbling with the door? These three should long be dead, or at the very least have been injured trying to get out of this room. But like I said, nothing makes sense. We'll just keep this theme going. Miraculously, the group manages to run away and hide in a storage room of some sort. They discuss the situation, and Gwen makes a very nice observation. My last plan failed spectacularly. Yes, you could say that. At least she gets this right. They decide to split up. Mazana and Gwen are going after Emmeline to get the chip back and save Arceus and the other performers. Well, I assume the other performers. They only talk about Arceus, but let's just hope they try to save a couple more people. And Rora goes off to free the cyborg dragon, who apparently has not been tampered with to the degree that he was part of this attack, but he will now serve as a diversion in town when he just goes flying and flaming things, I suppose. Gwen and Mazana find Emmeline at a door trying to break into a room that the Emperor is hiding out in. And you have to wonder where all of those countless soldiers went from just a second before. They were chasing after Mazana, Gwen and Rora, but now they're nowhere in the hallway, maybe doing something about Emmeline and the Watchman, but no, they just went poof, like the stable boy a couple of chapters back. Gwen tries talking to Emmeline again, and she just brings out the same argument. These cyborgs are your family too, they're your creation and they need you. You have to protect your other family. And for some reason this time it works. Emmeline folds, hands over the chip, and the Watchman sees the hostilities against, well, the door at the moment. But, you just repeat your argument from a couple of minutes earlier, but this time it goes through and Emmeline is just like, yes, I've waited 10 years for this moment to kill this guy. Let's just walk, it's fine. This is some nonsense. And even weirder, telepathy seems to be a thing now, because the second Emmeline decides that she's done attacking the palace, the Watchman sees their hostility and their attack as well, without her pushing any buttons or giving any voiced commands, so clearly they can read her mind now. But now that all of the cyborgs are working together, they march out into the gardens and prepare to run for their ship, I suppose. But Rora isn't where she's supposed to be. Apparently she was meant to run into town, free the dragon, make it do whatever she wanted it to do, and come back to the gardens just while Gwen was walking through the palace for a few minutes. I don't know, I mean, Rora might be fit and fast, but I don't think she's that fast. Anyway, it's safe to say nothing makes sense in this chapter. So the Emperor clearly hates cyborgs, whether that's out of fear or just, being a general dick, doesn't matter. But if he was so worried about them, then why did he allow Celeste into town with so many watchmen? Even if he assumed, well, he must have assumed they're human, they were still working for her and they were armed guards. I would assume that they would only be allowed to escort the cyborgs to the palace gates and then have to return to the ship or something. But no, she turned up with like a small army of her own, and that was apparently fine. Yeah, but this fight scene, this whole chapter, changing the mistress's motivation, or just like switching her thirst for revenge off like that, just makes no sense whatsoever. Yeah, good times. Looking forward to seeing the dragon again though. I hope he will make it through okay. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like, leave a comment, and subscribe if you want to help this channel out. I'll be back next week with another video. Bye guys!